Okay. So here the Torah said, we're on page 638. So yesterday we started talking about the goats. And we had mentioned yesterday how the goat that goes off the cliff, they call it the scapegoat. That's where you get the word scapegoat in English. And the goat, we said, is the coin loads it up with the averas, and then he takes the averas off the averas get broken apart with this goat. That's the first idea on page 638. So I'm just reading a couple of the words, a couple of the psukim. So it says, V'asir asher, 4 lines from the bottom. V'hasir asher ola olav hagorla azazel, the goat that has the lot came out on this goat. Yomad chai lifnei Hashem lechaper olav, they put him alive, they stand him up. L'shalach osa la'azazel hamidbar, to send them off to Azazel in the desert. V'ikriv Aaron es apar hachatas asher lo, and then Aaron brings the sin offering, the cow that he had separated. This is not one of the goats. V'chiper ba'ado v'ad beso, it's an atonement for Aaron and his household. V'shochat es par hachatas asher lo, and shechs the par hachatas. Now, the goat that goes to Azazel, they take this goat out to the cliff, and the goat's going to get pushed off. And then, turn to page 642. We're just skipping ahead for a second, because this is where it continues with the goat. And the second line, V'samach Aaron es shtei yodav al rosh ha'sa'ir hachai, page 642, second line from the top. Aaron puts his 2 hands on the head of the living goat. V'hisvada olav es kol avonos b'nei Yisrael. He confesses all the sins of the Jewish people. V'es kol pisheim l'chol chatosam, all their misdeeds, various descriptions of averas. V'nosan osam al rosh ha'sa'ir, he puts them on the head of this goat. V'shilach biyad ish iti hamidbara, and he sends it with this ish iti hamidbara. Now Rashi, the Art Scroll translates it what he called the man of the hour. He should send the he-goat. Where does he translate it? V'shilach biyad ish iti hamidbara. Send it with a designated man. The Art Scroll translated the ish iti hamidbara. Okay, so what's going on here? So Rav Hirsch has a very interesting insight into these 2 goats. Rav Hirsch says, imagine the mindset of these goats. Imagine you're the goat. You're the goat who's being taken off to Azazel. So what do you see? You look at the other goat, and he had La Hashem put on him. He's a sacrifice. He's the frummy. He's going to end up in the base medrash, in the base hamikdash. He's always in a shul somewhere. It's a life of self-sacrifice, a life of sacrifice, a life of restriction, a life of rules, a life of regulations. And look at me. Look at me. And he takes him out to the wilderness. And this goat, goats like climbing up, and he's, look at me, I'm on top of the world over here. And he goes up higher and higher and higher and higher. I live free. I've got no restrictions. Remember we said that says by Esav. Esav is called an Ish Yodea Tzayid Ish Sada. Esav was a man as a hunter out in the fields. And the nature of a field is that a field is wide open. It's a description of the Esavs of the world. No boundaries, no borders, no limitations. No, what do you call it? Everything is free. And then what happens in one instant, the goat gets pushed from the back and he comes to a crash. So he goes rolling down the hill. The goat is destroyed. So Rav Hirsch says that this is a parallel for people who make life choices. That's why there are 2 goats, and the goats look exactly alike. They cost the same amount. They're about the same size. If 2 people could start out at exactly the same situation in life, one of them makes a choice that he's going to be La Hashem. He's going to live his life devoted to God. So he goes into the Beis HaMikdash. Okay, this goat happens to get shechted. But the person who lives with a life of devotion to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so there's order in his life. His life follows a certain order. Nobody could everybody's destiny, there always HaKadosh Baruch Hu runs it. But a person follows the correct path, and generally there's blessing in his life. Everybody has challenges, but there's going to be blessing. This guy's he's living free, everything is good, and in one moment it comes to a crash. The classic example. And Rav Hirsch says that when you look around, you see the life of sinners. You see that's what happens in the life of sinners. The classic example, I'm not saying these people are sinners necessarily, But you see a guy like John Kennedy, who wasn't a tzaddik by any stretch of the imagination. But there he is, he's on top of the world. The guy Kennedy was on top of the world, the President of the United States. They said to him, don't ride in an open air car. They told him, the secret secretary said, no, I'll be okay. And he wasn't okay. And in one instance, it ends. The whole thing, he comes crashing down in one instance. Bill Buckner. I mean, you always got to go to sports if you're going to want reality. You never heard of Bill Buckner. Tell me you didn't hear of Bill Buckner. You've never heard of Bill Buckner? You never heard of Bill Buckner? Guys. Do I have to educate you in non-Torah subjects also? You never heard of Bill Buckner? The Mets against the what do you call it? In the World Series, the Mets against the Red Sox. When the Red Sox were one strike away from winning the World Series in 1986. And then they hit a ground ball, and Bill Buckner, who was a good player, he played for the Cubs. He must have been good. Yeah, he actually won a batting title once. He batted .319. He was a good player. The only thing anybody ever remembers, and he wasn't a Russian. I'm not saying Bill Buckner was a Russian. He played for the Cubs. He was a tzaddik. But, his whole career, and in one moment, the only thing anybody remembers about Bill Buckner, those who have heard of him and should have heard of him, the only thing anybody remembers is he made the big error that let the winning run in because the ball slid under his glove. Lonnie Smith. You never heard of Lonnie Smith either. You know what?
We were born after 9/11. We don't know these names.
You know that? Bill Clinton? Oh, wow, look at that. You're so cultured, honey. Wow, I'm so impressed. Yeah. So, see, Lonnie Smith was a good player, won a couple World Series, but in one World Series with Atlanta, he didn't score the winning run on a hit because he got deked out by the second. That's anybody remembers about Lonnie Smith. Ernest Biner. I'm talking about people who, Ernest Biner you've heard of. Cleveland, he messed up. He fumbled at the goal line. You never heard of him. You are uncultured. At the end of the day, it doesn't have to be here. A guy, Bernie Madoff, that you've certainly heard of. Right? There's a guy sitting on top of the world. And all of a sudden, Bernie Madoff has to go out in front of the cameras and say, it was all a lie. Then he's in prison for the rest of his life, earning 78 cents an hour, or whatever it was in the prison yard. And it all comes to a crash. That's what Rav Hirsch is saying. It comes to a crash. In a more contemporary, it doesn't have to be a major criminal. Here, Hillary Clinton. On top of the world, until she loses an election, she's devastated. Absolutely devastated. Not that I didn't eat supper that night, but she's absolutely devastated. So it comes to a crash. But people, you don't have to look that far. A person who lives without some sort of discipline in their life, their relationships may crumble. Their family may crumble. Their kids may not talk to them anymore. They don't have that. They don't have something that's anchoring their life. And therefore, Rav Hirsch says, this goat is laughing at all the frumies over there. But look at this goat down the line and look at him down the line. Look at the people who live with sacrifice. And down the line, they have a family, they have grandchildren, at the end of the day, one of the biggest tragedies you see is you go into a nursing home, an old age home. I remember because my bubby was in the old age home and in the nursing home, and we went in there, and she had constant visitors. Her kids were visiting, her grandchildren were visiting. Her home looked like a museum with pictures of all her children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. And the lady next to her in the room had nothing. And she was a miserable lady who had nothing in her life. She lived for herself, but down the line, you pay the price. That's what Rav Hirsch is saying. The goat, now there's a price. If you don't sacrifice, you're not going to get. It doesn't work that way. It has to be, and it is a sacrifice a little bit. On the other hand, the mistake is that while we are sacrificing, there's fulfillment and contentment. And it doesn't mean every single moment of every single day. I also have to do dishes on Motzei Shabbos and wash crusty chunk pots. I don't. I have to, but I don't. I'm just saying, for those who do. It's not like, oh, what a party. And you have to take your kid to the doctor once in a while, and sometimes you have to try to find the money to pay an electric bill. Okay, it doesn't mean it's all a party. But you're living a life of fulfillment and contentment. That's the life La Hashem. And the goat, La Azazel, ends up down the line, he ends up falling off a cliff. Okay. If you take a look at Pasuk Yud Gimel, now go back. I just skipped ahead because that's where it talks about the goat. Now it talks about Aaron HaKohen, who brings the Ketoris. The Ketoris is the incense. The Gemara says the Ketoris in the Beis HaMikdash, first of all, they burnt the Ketoris every day. There was a Ketoris offering burnt every day. Plus, there was the Ketoris that was on the outside golden altar. On Yom Kippur, the Ketoris was brought into the Holy of Holies. The Ketoris had such a powerful fragrance. The Gemara says that you could smell the Ketoris from the Beis Hamikdash. They could smell the Ketoris all the way in Yericho. It says goats in Yericho would sneeze from the smell of the Ketoris in the Beis Hamikdash. And it says a bride in Yerushalayim did not have to perfume herself on her wedding day. A bride on her wedding day normally perfumes herself quite a bit. A bride in Yerushalayim on her wedding day did not have to perfume herself because of the smell of the Ketoris. That's how powerful and wonderful the smell of the Ketoris was. Now here, there's a special offering of Ketoris that the Kohen Gadol brings into the Holy of Holies on Yom Kippur. Now, the way it was done is he would bring it into the Holy of Holies, and he would put the Ketoris, he brought a fire pan with coals in it, and he would put the Ketoris on the what do you call it, on the pan, and it would create a whole pillar of smoke, a whole cloud of smoke. So it says like this: V'nasanes haketoris ala eish lifnei Hashem. He should put, third line on page 640. Sorry, third line on 640. He should put the ketoris on the fire in the presence of Hashem. V'chisa anan haketoris es hakaporis asher la'idus. The cloud would cover the kaporis, which was the covering of the holy ark. Al ha'idus v'lo yamus, and he would not die. Now, the tzedukim. The Torah is emphasizing over here, why does it say he should do it before Hashem? The Tzedukim were the reformers of the day. They would put the Ketoris on, there were Tzeduki Kohen Gadol, and in the time of the second Beis Hamikdash, it was a bought position. The Kohen Gadol was a bought position. That's why in the first Beis Hamikdash, which was 410 years, there were only 18 Kohen Gadols. If you do the math, it comes out to about 22.5 years average for each Kohen Gadol. In the time of the second Beis Hamikdash, there were over 300 Kohen Gadols, and that was for 420 years. Shimon HaTzadik was the Kohen Gadol for 40 years. Yochanan Kohen Gadol was 80 years. That's 120. Scoop that right off the top. So you got 300 Kohen Gadols for 300 years. Do the math. One per year. That's one Kohen Gadol per year. There used to be a vitamin called one a day. Right? There was a vitamin, I remember, I don't know if they still have it. It was one a day and one a day plus iron. That was the commercial. And if you take this, you grow big and strong. And this was one a year. And then they died in the course of the year. There's actually, Yerushalmi says that when the Kohen Gadol would go into the Holy of Holies, the Zohar, there's a Zohar that says they would actually tie a rope to his foot. So if they heard a thud inside the Holy of Holies, they would haul him out. Then they hooked up a second guy and sent him in. I always wondered about what was going through that second guy's mind. Like, I'm not feeling so good today, They tie a rope to his foot and send him in. Okay, so the Tzedukim, in the time of the second Beis Hamikdash, they would put the Ketoris on the coals before they entered the Holy of Holies. That was what, they had an agenda. Now, the way, I'll get to you one second, so the way it's put in the Gemara is shelo yesaken mi bachutz. He shouldn't arrange it on the outside, the yachnis, and bring it on the inside. Don't do it on the out. Don't take from the outside and bring it on the inside. So the commentaries say, the terminology of the Gemara is talking specifically about the Ketoris, but you could really apply that to the reforming in all generations. Because what do? They take ideas from outside Judaism and try to bring them into Judaism. And that's exactly what we're against. We don't need any outside. We're not inviting any outside ideas. I think Rabbi Gottlieb told us a story once. I don't remember who told us. There was a guy who was in a class, a college sociology class. So the teacher went around the room. I think I mentioned this to you before. A teacher went around the room and looked at the class. He said, "McCarthy, you're Catholic, aren't you?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "Can you tell us something about your religion?" So McCarthy gets up and he speaks for about 10 minutes about it. And he turns and he sees on the list, it says, Mohammed, you're a Muslim, right? You can tell us something about your religion. So Mohammed gets up and he sets off a bomb and then talks about his religion for about 10 minutes. And then he says, "Goldstein, you're Jewish, aren't you?" He says, "Yeah, can you tell us something about your religion?" He says, "Well, no, I can't." He says, "Well, why not?" He says, "Because I'm Reform." So the teacher, who was not Jewish, said to him, well, Goldstein, don't you think you ought to know something about your religion before you reform it? So Goldstein got a shock, and Goldstein, as a result, ended up frum and ended up in Jewish outreach. As a result, a little musser schmooze from the goy in the classroom. What does reform mean? Reform means you're changing it. The Torah says we're not looking for any outside ideas. Don't bring any outside ideas in, number one. Number two, it says that the Kohen Gadol had a rim around, remember when we learned in Parsha Tetzaveh, it describes the garments of the Kohen Gadol. And on his, the me'il, it says it was a reinforced rim around the neck. He had a reinforced rim. Why did he have this reinforced rim? So there's a statement in the, also I think it's in the Zohar, that says that the Satan himself would try to grab him by the neck to stop him from going into the Holy of Holies on Yom Kippur. How do you like that? The Satan himself was there. So he has a reinforced rim. Whatever it means is that the Satan is intimidated. And you know that on Yom Kippur, the Satan cannot prosecute us on Yom Kippur. He's neutralized on Yom Kippur. The numerical value of HaSatan is 364. That means there's one day out of the year that the Satan does not have the ability to prosecute prosecute the Jewish people. That's on Yom Kippur. Yes, somebody was going to ask a question. Did you want to ask a question? Oh, I thought somebody wanted to. Okay, yeah, go ahead. Please open that door. Keep that open and keep it open so we get the what do you call it? Yeah, go ahead.
So there's a ram that's an elevation offering, right? And then there's 2 he-goats for a sin offering that one's designated Azazel.
And the other one is La Hashem.
Fine. So and that's separate to Aaron's own.
Yes.
So in Pasuk Yud, it talks about the Azazel.
Right.
For sins that's going to be sent away.
Right.
But in Pasuk Tet, it says that the he-goat designated for Hashem is also going to be a sin offering.
Yeah, not a problem.
What do you mean a sin offering? Like an atonement?
An atonement, yeah. It's atonement for the Jewish people.
And what do they do with that one?
That one, they put on, let's see, what do they do with that one? I don't remember what it atones for specifically. One of them atones for, it doesn't say. It says the goat, I'm not sure.
Why doesn't Azazel just...
Azazel is not an offering. I told you, Azazel is not a korban. Azazel is taking the sins and it's destroying the sins. It is not a korban. It's not a korban. We're pushing it off. It as almost like a bribe. It's described as being a bribe to the Satan, because the Satan and the satanic forces hang out in desolate places, all the negative forces, and so giving them a bribe. Don't prosecute us on Yom Kippur.
So if that Azazel is getting rid of the sins as a bribe.
So what do you need? I don't know. Okay. I don't know. I'm not sure what that's an atonement for. It could be it's just a general sin offering. I'm not sure. So I'll tell you what I am sure about. And I'm going to get you afterwards, Yehuda. If you look at Pasuk Tes Zayin, so it says V'chiper. Oh, here we go. Here it is. On Pasuk Tes Zayin. I'm not going to get you afterwards, Yehuda. V'chiper ala kodesh mitumos b'nei Yisrael mipishem l'chol chatos. It's an atonement for various forms of impurity and the sins of the Jewish people. This is also an atonement. Now, take a look at Rashi. Rashi says, it's a right column of Rashi, Mitumos b'nei Yisrael, al hanichnosim lamikdash betuma. This is for people who entered the Beis HaMikdash in a state of impurity, v'lo nodo lahem basov, and they didn't find out about it. It's an atonement for people who have a sin lurking and they didn't even know about it. They entered the Beis HaMikdash when they were tamei, and they're not supposed to do that. Okay? That's what it atones for. Now, and then it says, V'chein yaseh la'ol boid. So it says that it's the left column of Rashi. Now stay with us, gentlemen. Kishem shehiza mishneim bifnim, just as he sprinkles the blood inside the holy area. Achas lemala v'sheva lemata, 1 down, 7 up. 1 up, 7 down. Kach maze ala parochas mibachutz, mishneim achas lemala v'sheva lemata. He sprinkles outside also. There are 2 sets of sprinklings. Then it says, Hashochein itam besoch tubasam, God who is with them, the Shechina, the divine presence that's with them when they're impure, afal pi shehem tmeim, even though the Jewish people are tamei, Shechina beinehem, the Shechina rests among them. That's what Rashi says. An interesting statement. Even though the Jewish people there's a certain impurity, the Shechina rests with the Jewish people. So I saw there, the Zohar says, Midas harachamim. God has different attributes. By the way, when we talk about God's attributes, God doesn't have different moods. Sometimes we say, well, God's angry at the Jewish people, God's kind to the Jewish people. It doesn't mean God is, it means that a description from a human perspective of how God is relating to us, that's how we would describe it. God is consistent and unchanging. But when things are challenging for the Jewish people, we describe that as God's midas hadin. When things are good for the Jewish people, it's called midas harachamim. But God himself is not changing. It's not like God had a bad day, got stuck in traffic, therefore took it out on the Jewish people. So midas harachamim is the midah of Hashem's midah of mercy. There's a statement, Kabbalah, in the Zohar that says that midas harachamim comes to the world as a woman. It appears as a woman. What does that mean? What does it mean that midas harachamim appears as a woman? There's sources that say that a father has more rachamim on his child than his mother. Kirachim av albonim, as a father has rachamim on his son. And there is one time where Jewish women have no rachamim at all, where they absolutely cruel and completely care nothing about the victim, which is when a frum Jewish mother washes the face of her 4-year-old child. Right, and he's screaming for mercy, and she said, "You are not walking out of this house with a dirty face," and no mercy there, right? And the father, I couldn't do that. I didn't have that kind of guy. Well, mother, listen, you walk out, don't tell anybody who you are. You're not walking out with that. And the kid screams and squeals. The other time is when she's combing out the hair for lice. Israel, there's a lot of lice because it's a hot, sweaty climate, and kids in kindergarten, if there's one kid who has lice, then they have to do lice checks. They have to do regular lice checks. They have these special lice combs. My wife used to give the kids these lice, in the morning she would, scoop out what the kids are screaming. And I could just tell from the other room, that's a lice check right there, and they're doing it. Then once in a while you see this kid on the street with curly hair, like seriously thick curly hair, and just wondering, boy, that's a Gehenna for that kid every morning, I can tell you. So it says that midas harachamim appears as a woman. What's the idea? The idea is that the Zohar says, if a baby soils himself, where does the father go? Father heads in the other direction. Right? I'm not saying it. I'm just telling you. I'm not saying I didn't do that. I'm just telling you what the Zohar says. The father heads in the other direction. The mother, not only she'll even hug the baby. Baby's soiled before she'll give the baby a hug and a kiss and start changing his diaper. Midas harachamim appears as a woman. It's like HaKadosh Baruch Hu comes to the Jewish people even when we're undeserving. Even when we're soiled, even when we don't, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us a hug. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu unleashes mercy on the Jewish people even when we're not deserving. That's midas harachamim. Midas harachamim coming as a woman. That's what it says. Okay. Now, take a look at this Pasuk Chafal, back to where we were. So we mentioned this designated man. Now, this Ish Iti takes the goat out. How did they choose the man who's going to take the goat out? So one of the Rishonim, there's a Chizkuni, is one of the Rishonim. He says, I don't know what his source is. He says, whoever took the goat to the cliff, to push him off the cliff, was not going to live out the year. Whoever took the goat to the cliff wasn't going to live out the year. Now, any volunteers? Not everybody at once, right? No. Right? Okay, so what they did is, astrologically, they would check astrologically, which is permissible. It's not forbidden to use astrological if you know what you're doing. We don't nowadays. Nowadays they have in the newspaper, they have the horoscope, don't they? They have the horoscope, which is, it's usually, you're going to have a very special day today. Right? Right? It's something, really, and then the guy gets mugged. That's pretty special. Right? Or you're gonna meet somebody special. The what do you call it? The IRS guy shows up at your door. He's pretty special, or he's got a Saturday night special with him. Whatever the case may be. That's nonsense. But they would check astrologically to see a man who's destined to die throughout in the course of the year, and he's the guy that they would choose to go and send to go to the thing. I don't know how they, I could just see them calling a guy over. Hey, Zalman, can we talk to you for a second? We got some good news and some bad news. Yeah. Well, the good news is you've been chosen for the honor of taking the goat to the cliff. No kidding. Yeah. Zalman, could I have your baseball glove, by the way? He didn't mean, he came back, but somehow it says, apparently, that's why he's called Ish Iti. Iti means 8. 8 is a time. Means 8. Hashem. There's a time to do for Hashem. Ish Iti is the man of the time. That means his time is up. And therefore, he was chosen to be the one to take the goat. That's what the Forshim say. Now, I want to show you something very important. V'nosa ha'sa'ir, next pasuk, 22. V'nosa ha'sa'ir, it's kol avonosam el eretz gezerah. The goat would take their sins out to a desolate land. V'shilach es ha'sa'ir b'amidbar, and he would send them off in the desert. Now, the Gemara says over here that the goat, who, as he loaded up, Aaron has confessed the sin, the Kohen Gadol has confessed the sins. The Gemara says, Kale Harosh, and the best way to put Kale Harosh would be simpletons. The simple people would say, hurry up, get that goat out of here. He's got our averas. Get the goat out. Get him out as quick as you could. And the Gemara refers to them as simple people. They're the simpletons, not as simple people. Simpletons. Simple has got a negative connotation. They're a bunch of simple. Get the goat out of here. Whereas the Ziknei Kahuna, the elders in the Talmidei Chachamim, what were they concerned about? They were concerned that the Kohen who's doing the service on Yom Kippur in full view of it, all the things that the service entailed on Yom Kippur, it was a big day of work for the Kohen Gadol. They're concerned that he should do everything according to halacha, the way the Torah wants him to do it. What were the simpletons concerned? Get the goat out. He's got our averas. So one of the ideas over why are they called simpletons? I mean, the goat's got the averas. Get him out of here. The answer is that sometimes in life, people throw out the baby with the bathwater. That means I never liked that expression, by the way. I never saw anybody do that. But what do you call it? We don't throw out bathwater. We drain it down. I never understood that expression at all. But maybe back in the day, yeah. So the idea is that where are you putting your emphasis on? And we find this all the time in life where people take something which is trivial and they turn that into something which they think is important, whereas the people who are in the know, they know what's really important versus what's trivial. So somebody asked me an interesting question. A woman, what's more important, that she should eat shalashudas or she should hear the shofar on Rosh Hashanah? Let's say she's only got to try, it's Rosh Hashanah. I don't know how it would even be a conflict, but let's say she can only do one out of the two. Her husband's only willing to babysit once, not twice. She could either stay home and eat shalashudas, or she could go to shul and hear the shofar. I don't know how you have a conflict, but somebody asked me that question on Shabbos, this last Shabbos. Which one is more important for a woman to do? What would you say? Shofar. What could be more important than the shofar? And the answer is, and I asked the Talmid Chacham, and he said the same thing that I was thinking, it's clear shalashudas is more important. Why? Not more frequent. It's mandatory. Shalashudas, whether it's deraisa derabanan, is man. A woman has to eat three meals on Shabbos also. Shofar for a woman is not mandatory. It's a very nice thing to do if she has time. It's a wonderful thing. But which weighs more in halacha? What weighs more in halacha is doing what you have to do, not what you want to do, not what you feel like doing. So people often take trivialities, and that's the simpletons. The simpleton, it looks like, ooh, it makes a lot of noise. It's a big issue. I'll give you two classic examples. One of them was in when they still had the Soviet Union and Jews were locked, the Jews were still behind the Iron Curtain. There were protests going on. I was even a little kid. They took me once I went to a demonstration for free Soviet Jewry, and people were holding up the placards, free Soviet Jewry, and we're all out there for Soviet Jewry. And at the end of the day, I wasn't in the Soviet Jewry when I was at a protest against the French president. What was his name? De Gaulle. I think he came to Chicago for some reason. We were out there protesting. Who was after De Gaulle? Who was the guy after? I think it might have been De Gaulle. I don't know. I was a little kid. I was about 12 years old. I didn't know anything. I just, time to go out. But there were people. I never protested. Russian Jewry. They went out with placards. In the meantime, the Russians had communicated to the Americans that as long as the protests go on, we're not freeing people, because then it looks like we're caving into world pressure. And Agudas Yisrael of America had a clandestine operation going where they were getting Jews out. And they said, don't go to the protest. The Gedolim said, don't go to protests. And the simple people say, yeah, protest, free Russia. And so while the guy's out in the snow holding his placard, he's keeping Jews in Russia. Because the Russians said, we're not going to go out. Because the simple people they look at the trivial, they make a big deal out of it. Whereas the Talmidei Chachamim, they see what's really important. What's more important? The Kohen Gadol doing the Avodah. See, you have a goat loaded up with the Averas. So they say, get him out. Who said that you're in a hurry? Who told you you got spooked because the goat has Averas on it? Who told you, it's got the cooties and it's going to spread if you don't get him out of here fast? So the simple people were tugging at it and say, get him out. Kalei, get him out. Whereas the important people, they say, hey, I hope the Kohen Gadol is doing the Ketoris right, and he's shechting the animals right, and he's sprinkling the blood right. Got to make sure you do the halacha right, because people focus on the trivialities. Number one. Number two, there was a second thing. Yeah, I was once driving with a guy. I once gave a lecture in a different city here in Israel. So the guy driving me back was kind of a nationalistic type guy. And as we're driving, we passed under a bridge somewhere near Tel Aviv. He said, did you see that? So I said, what did I miss? So there's a sign on the bridge. There's a big plaque. They managed to put one of these posters up, a giant poster on the bridge. Ha'am im HaGolan. The nation is for the Golan Heights. We don't want to give back the Golan Heights. Now, do you think that those placards affect the decisions of the Israeli politicians, whether they're giving back land or not? What affects Israeli politicians' decisions? No, Americans. Whatever the Americans say, that's what they have to do. So they're placards. So the guy says to me, I'm part of an organization that's put up over 200 signs on bridges in Israel. So I had to muster up all of my power of self-control to not look at the guy and say, so? What a waste of time and energy. You'd have been much better off going to the Daf Yomi Shir. That would have contributed much more to the Jewish people. A simple person doesn't, I guess this sounds like a good idea. What, do you really think you accomplished anything with that? I'll tell you even more. When you argue with a fool, that means two fools are arguing. So if somebody accosts you with Judaism and attacks you and says, how come you think you're better than everybody else? If you start answering, then you're one of the Kalei Rosh. You're one of the simple people. Do you think that you're going to gain anything by answering him? Do you think he's listening for an answer? So you have to. It sounds like a good idea. It sounds like a good idea to try to take him on and to argue with him. You have to think a little bit. What does the Torah really want under those circumstances? What is the Torah expecting from us? Are you really going to accomplish? Do you think it's really that important? That's what the Torah is emphasizing. These people are prioritizing something that essentially is a triviality. Okay. Take a look. Skip all the way now to Perek Yud Zayin, Pasuk Yud Gimel. Pasuk Yud. Okay. Now, the Torah begins over here, and it says, look at the top of page 646. This is the introduction. Top of page 646. This is what Hashem has commanded. Ish, second line in 646. Ish mi beis Yisrael asher yishchat shor o kesav o ez b'machana. Anybody who shechts an ox or a sheep or a goat, and you're bringing a sacrifice. Vel Pesach Ol Moed lo hivio, you did not bring it to the Ol Moed, you brought a sacrifice. Lahakriv korban laHashem b'ftei Mishkan Hashem, dam yechoshev laishahu dam shachav, he has spilled blood. V'nichras haishahu mikerav, he will be cut off eternally. That means we're talking over here about a person who takes a sacrifice, and you want to bring a sacrifice, but you don't bring it in the base of English. You take it outside the camp and you sacrifice somewhere else. Why does the Torah bring this section over here? What's the connection to the previous section? This goes back to what you were asking. What's the connection to the previous section? What were we talking about? We're talking about the goat that you take off to Azazel. So in case somebody is going to make a mistake and think that, well, if you could take the goat outside the camp, you could bring sacrifices outside the camp. The Torah is saying, no, you don't. It wasn't a sacrifice. That wasn't shechted, that was pushed off a cliff. Sacrifices are limited and unique to the Beis HaMikdash. They have to go straight into the Beis HaMikdash. That's what the Torah is emphasizing. Now, skip down ahead. Skip down. Take a look at Pasuk Yud. It's 6 lines from the bottom, 7 lines from the bottom. V'ish ish bebeis Yisrael, any Jew, umin hagir hagor b'socham, asher yochal kol dam, if you eat blood, v'nasati panai ba'i nefesh ha'ocheles es adam, I, God, will turn all my attention on that person. It's not a good thing. V'ichrati yoso mikerev hama, I will cut you off. We're not allowed to eat blood. Jews have an aversion to blood. Ki nefesh habasar badamhi, the soul of the living creature is in the blood. Vani nesativ lechem al hamizbeach, blood is sprinkled on the altar, lechaper al nafshosechem, to atone for you. Ki hadam hu banefesh yechaper, the blood is an atonement. Now, we have a strict prohibition here of eating blood. And the Gemara says blood, which is not really that tempting, if you avoid eating blood, you get blessings for your family and your offspring and all future generations. So now there's a kal v'chomer. If blood, which isn't that tempting, and you avoid eating blood, you get blessings. So imagine if you avoid things that you are tempted, like immorality and theft, which are temptations. We have a natural drive in that direction, and we overcome it, so imagine the blessings you're going to get. That's what the Gemara at the end, I think it's the end of Makos, says, that you actually get with the Masechta we're learning, you get a blessing for overcoming the temptation. Okay. The blood, number one, the reason we don't eat blood is because the blood goes on the altar. And that's something devoted to the king. So it's not right for us to go and eat blood if it's something that is supposed to be devoted to the king. Number one. Number two, by the way, I have a friend who was a sheikhet. He's a sheikhet. So he told me he was once in the slaughterhouse. So they have some in the slaughterhouse. The animals are big. A cow's a big animal. You got to kind of manipulate it. So they have some non-Jews there working also, some big, strong guys to help you adjust. You ever see what a cow looks like up close? They're pretty wide, pretty thick, and pretty strong. And so the non-Jews are there to help to hold it steady and to move it around. So he said that he was there one day at one of the slaughter, the shochet, he shechted the cow. One of the non-Jews was there. So he just filled up his cow he filled up his cup right at the neck, right? Filled it up and he knocked it down. Apparently he hadn't had breakfast that morning, so he knocked it down. It was either that or decaf, and he chose to go with the blood, and he knocked it down. Now to us, we're repulsed by that. It's repulsed. In England they have something in the north of England called black pudding. You ever hear of black pudding? Never heard of black pudding. Black pudding is like you have a salami roll. What is it, Nick?
No, I said I don't want to hear about it.
You do. See, and you're getting rewarded already for that. See, how do you like that? Look at this car. Black pudding is like you have salami roll. They make like blood roll. They take blood, congealed blood. They make a roll out of it, and then they I'm sure. Listen, if they eat it, they probably taste good. They're not going to eat something bad. They probably spice it. What?
It tastes good.
It tastes. He heard from a friend in England. Where do you go?
Grandfather.
Yeah.
My grandfather's Irish. Yeah. that.
Okay, there you go.
He likes blood sausage. Yeah.
Blood sausage, and I'm sure they spice it up, whatever it is, then stomp people, and then they go to soccer match and stomp on each other, and you wonder why. But okay. So now, where do we get rewarded for not eating blood? You know where you get rewarded? We will be rewarded. You'll be rewarded for it, even though you may never come across it. You know where you're rewarded for eating blood? Every time you buy kosher meat. And how much kosher meat costs compared to non-kosher meat? Probably about 8 times the price, without exaggeration. Go check hamburger meat in a what do you call it, in a regular grocery store, in a Kroger's or something, and check the price of kosher meat. It's astronomically more. Where do you get the reward? Because the meat, kosher meat, has been salted before you got it. They salt, in order to draw out the blood, they salt the meat. It's got to be a certain size salt. It can't be too fine, because then it'll dissolve on the meat. And it can't be too big, because then it won't get into the crevices. It's a certain size salt, and they salt the meat, and they leave it there for about 20 minutes or a half hour, and you see that the salt turns red. It absorbs, the salt draws out the blood. After that, halachically, any residue, sometimes you'll see a little red residue, that's not halachically called blood. The halacha determines where it is, a half hour of salting, and it comes out. Liver, for those of you who like chopped liver can't be salted. Because according to halacha, liver is the description, and halacha, liver is all blood. And the only way to kosher liver is by roasting it out over an open fire. You can't roast it. You cannot salt. Liver that's been salted is not kosher. Liver has to be roasted out. Now, when you pay 8 times the price for kosher meat, you're paying for supervision, you're paying for shechita, you're paying for labor, and you're paying for people, part of that labor is salting it. That takes time, and it has, if certain people are on the line, their job is just to salt the meat as it comes off the line. So every time you buy kosher meat and you pay for it, you're getting rewarded for not eating blood, because that's part of the process. I was a little kid, I still remember people used to kosher the meat at home. I remember my mother koshering liver. When I was a little kid, I remember koshering liver. It's a special thing, and she roasts it out over the thing, and it smells to high heaven. It just smokes up the whole house, and I don't like liver anyway, and therefore you shouldn't either. But the what do you call the people used to kosher it at home. Now they do it. Most of it is in the factory. But when you pay for it, so you're getting rewarded now for not eating blood, because you're paying extra money for kosher meat. So the first thing the Torah says is don't eat the blood. Now, second question is, why would you eat blood? Why would they eat blood? If the Torah tells you not to do something, that means you might have a reason why you would do it. The Torah never says don't take a chair and put it up and down on a table 1,000 times, because nobody's going to do that. If the Torah says don't eat blood, which, you didn't even want to hear about it. You pulled a face on me. None of us find it very appetizing, yet the Torah says don't do it. Why?
It's more convenient.
What's that?
It's more convenient.
What, to just take the meat and cook without? But why? Oh, you mean to be just out the convenience?
Instead of doing all the koshering.
So it's convenient. But why is the Torah? And what about somebody who there seems to be a temptation here? What's the temptation? The answer is that somebody who wanted to make contact with the negative evil forces would consume blood. You would eat blood, right? And all the what do you call it? The movies you saw when they were, what do you call it, when you go out at midnight? All sorts of devil worship doesn't always involve some guy eating blood with it dripping down the side of his face, and that's what we associate with blood. Okay. Now, just 1 second. Look what happens when you do shech the meat. It says, where is it? On Pasuk. Yeah, Pasuk Yud Gimel, top of page 648. Watch this. V'ish ish mibnei Yisrael, umin hager agor besocham, asher yotzu tseid chaya o'of, if you hunt undomesticated animals or fowl, asher ye'achal, which are edible, in other words, kosher undomesticated animals like venison, deer, venison. I don't know if you ever had venison? Is it good?
Very.
It is?
Yeah.
What, like deer? Like, is it good? I don't think I've ever had it.
Super good.
Super good. And fowl? Yeah, fowl we eat all the time. It's called chicken, right? Or duck. I don't think have you ever had dove? No. And you wouldn't admit it in public if you did. But, chicken we've had. So what do you do after you hunt these animals? You shech them. V'shofach es damo v'chiso ba'ofar. You have to cover the blood. When they shech a chicken, you have to cover the blood of the chicken. When they shech the deer, they have to cover the blood of the deer. There's a mitzvah of kisui hadam.
What does it mean to cover it? Just
Take dirt. You take dirt. You actually cover the blood wherever it's spilled. You cover the blood, and it says specifically, don't do it with your foot. Don't kick the blood over the dirt on it, because that's not respect for the mitzvah. Do the mitzvah right. Take the dirt up and sprinkle the blood on the way. I've never done it, but that's how it's done. It's called kisui hadam. Now, it's limited to fowl, and it's limited to undomesticated animals, goats, sheep. Cows, you don't have to cover the blood. You don't have to cover the blood. Why? Why does that blood has to be covered? That blood's not covered. Why? So the commentaries say like this. Let's go back to the prohibition of eating blood. Why would you eat blood? Because the Ramban talks about people who wanted to contact the occult, so they consumed blood that was a way of making contact with these forces. Where are these forces hanging out, as we said earlier? Where do you usually find them? Out in the wilderness. They're not in populated areas, in civilized areas. Out in the wilderness, out in soiled, dirty places, desolate places, that's where they hang out. Where is it that you're going to get a cow or a goat or a sheep? Where do you normally get them and shech them? Probably in your barn. So there are no forces of evil hanging around in a populated area like your barn, where you're part of a community. But where are you going to go to get a sheep? Where are you going to go to get a deer or a venison? You're going to go out into the forests and out into the hills. Where are you going to get birds? Out in the forests and out in the hills, except for domesticated chickens. But since they're part of the category, they go with it, even though they're domesticated on your farm. But at the end of the day, they are in the bird category. Most bird categories are out. Now what happens? You're out there in the wilderness and you caught a deer and you shechted it. And all of a sudden you see the blood and you look around you, wow, desolation. Wow, now's my chance. I can make contact with those forces. Right? And so you have the temptation where you are that you may consume blood in order to get involved in this sort of pursuit. Therefore, the Torah says, cover it over before you get tempted. Cover over the blood. A cow in your barn, there's no temptation. One of the commentators actually says, because domesticated animals have a thicker blood that people aren't really tempted. People aren't really tempted, where the venison or a chicken, it's a more refined blood, where people might, it's like a Diet Coke. Some people might be a little more tempted. Whereas the cow blood is more, it's more gooey and mooey, so that they're not. But the main reason that is because there's no trouble you could get into in your farm. But out in the desolation, out in the wilderness, the blood is a temptation. And therefore the Torah says cover it over. And it's specifically by undomesticated animals, which are kosher. What other undomesticated animals what do people eat besides venison and deer?
Buffalo?
I think buffalo and bison, I think they're kosher. Yeah. I think they're kosher. What's that?
People eat bear.
No, I'm talking about fruit. I'm talking kosher. I don't think a moose is kosher. Quail? Quail's a bird. Quail's a bird. No, I'm talking about animals. What kosher non-domesticated animals are there?
I heard that the animals with horns are kosher animals.
What, like an antelope?
That it also
If it has the signs.
All the animals that have horns meet the split hoof and chew their cud.
I have to check on that. I don't think moose. A giraffe is kosher. A giraffe has the kosher signs. We were all told you don't eat giraffe because they don't know where to shecht it. That never made sense to me as a kid. The giraffe's the easiest thing to shecht. He's got the longest neck. You can close your eyes and hit the target there. That never made sense. What I heard is that a giraffe, there are two problems. Number one, the giraffe meat is apparently not very good. It's very tough meat. And number two, it's going to be very hard to get a hold of a giraffe and get them in a position where you could actually shech them and hold them down, that's a little, giraffes kill lions. Do you know that? A giraffe with a kick could kill a lion. You didn't know that. I ain't lying. A giraffe with a kick could kill, to go and rustle down a giraffe. A giraffe, to the best of my knowledge, is kosher. There's no problem with the neck, with shechting it, because it's got more neck than anything else. Certainly more neck than a chicken. And what do you call? I think the meat just isn't good. I think buffalo meat isn't good either.
It's good.
It is good.
It's great. Yeah.
So then why did they kill all the buffaloes? Why did Wild Bill, and when the Americans settled, they had the buffalo shooting. Why were they killing them if they could eat them?
It's so good.
Really?
They wanted to hide. They wanted to like,
Nutrient dense.
No, they kept them. They littered the desert. They went out and shot them. There were contests, buffalo shooting contests. They weren't shooting them for the hides. It was just time to kill them. A Wild Bill Cody, right?
also ruined
Buffalo Bill. You never heard of Buffalo Bill? Oh, that you didn't hear of either? That had nothing to do with time, gentlemen. That's history. I read history like you read history, which neither of us did. Just blood with a